The clattering of talons raking across the floor intermingled with Galel's spouting several variations of "What the Tartarus?" sent a chill up my spine. "Appears problem," was Prideful Policy's reply, his tone carrying an icy calm that made my hairs stand on end. The crash of a door swinging into the wall was accompanied by Galel's voice escalating into an irritated screech. "Why are you still standing around? Go check it out!" Her words hit me like a bundle of needles to the hindquarters, setting my hooves in motion. I needed to get out, and I needed to do it now. Various bottles and other supplies scattered everywhere which way as I plowed through them. Despite the noise, Mocha seemed to be too busy shouting over his shoulder to notice me. "Cedar, what did I tell you about the next time I found a mare in my claws?" I slammed into him at full speed, the door frame groaning as he crashed into it. Though I careened off in the opposite direction, a few unsteady steps allowed me to restore my balance. The Pegasus and Griffin bandits, who were to my immediate right, were left behind as I blasted past them. My eyes darted around the balcony, trying to formulate a plan better than get away from them. And even then, I wasn't doing a very good job. I was headed to the far end of the left balcony, which happened to be straight towards the orange earth pony bandit. On the upside, she was only half turned to face me by the time I'd closed the gap. She lashed out with an awkwardly highly telegraphed headbutt. Uneasily ducking the attack, I planted myself low, then sprung up, throwing all my weight against the bandit's side. She stumbled back, but I knew that would do little to stop an earth pony. Swinging around, I lashed out with my hind legs. Both hooves found home. The sickening chorus of cracking bone and strained wood filled the air. Satisfied that she would be unable to follow, I pushed off, hoping I hadn't given the rest of my opponents too much time to catch up. Barely had I finished the thought when out of the corner of my eye, I caught the glimpse of a Pegasus bandit closing the gap. She was already running parallel to me on the other balcony, no doubt aiming to cut me off at the end where the two joined. I stole a glance over the railing. The empty space around the displays seemed so inviting, but it would be so simple to hop down and reach the front door. But it was most likely a place that was guarded, and I could no longer trust the route to be safe. Not to mention the blue earth pony disembarking the stairs ensured that the side doors would be a serious risk. I was both impressed and annoyed at this foresight. In such a spur-of-the-moment defense, my best bet was the door at the end of the hall. It was more or less one of those full-pane windows with a large handle attached to it. But at the moment, with the afternoon sun filtering through it, giving the door a sort of orangey halo, it was my salvation. There was no time to check for the lock, and even if there was, my response would have been a firm buck anyway. So I skipped right to the end. The glass was surprisingly sturdy and unwilling to break. The handle, on the other hoof, was too happy to tear loose from the beam. I squinted as I charged right out into the light and freedom. Or so I thought, until the griffin plowed into me. We tumbled across the plank floor as a tangle of claws, hooves, and paws. While the air and floor suffered the blunt of our wild swinging, the griffin did catch me once. Two talons grated across my chest, clawing awkwardly enough to do a little more than scratch, while my forehoof glanced off the side of his neck. Our scuffle could have easily carried on for several more feet, but the balcony railing had other plans. I found it first, grasping on to the blurry sky as my barrel slammed into the vertical beams. The griffin didn't do any better. Being far too concerned with trying to claw my face to notice that he was about to meet solid wood. With a crack, his head rebounded off the railing, looking for all the world like he was going to collapse. No, forget about falling this way. I lashed out with my hind legs, and the griffin wheezed, twisting as he straightened up. He was caught in that awkward place between trying to double over and momentum. I wound up and struck again, pushing him as far away from me as I could. His stomach collapsed, and he was thrown up into the air, bouncing off and over the railing. A dull thud, followed by several confused yells, left it up to me. Finally, having a moment to breathe, I shook off my daze and scrambled to my hooves. Sliding up to the railing, I stayed low, sticking my head out just enough to get an eye on the griffin. He laid in a twisted heap, though there was no blood, a good sign for him. Several onlookers had gathered around the bandit, with a few stragglers drifting in here and there. So much for doing this quietly. The villagers presented something of a strange mix of advantage and disadvantage. Flying away was almost certain to alert every pony and set the militia upon me. But if I could sneak down, perhaps I could blend into the crowd and slink away. I reached my wing back to make sure the poster was still with me, and touched thin air. Where did I lose it? My heart seized. Through the clacking of talons behind me, set it into overdrive. I whirled around just in time to see Galel snatching the scroll off the ground. Looking for this? She sneered. Maybe I am. I watched her carefully, my mind whispering just how dire the situation had suddenly become. After a short silence, her face twisted into annoyance. What? Afraid to be a pain in the ass when my back isn't turned? I couldn't tell if she was buying time or simply a bit unhinged. Perhaps both. But I wasn't in the mood for either. You going to talk all day? It's just polite to chit-chat a bit before bending people to my will. She raised a talon to the poster, tracing a line across it. Now, be a good little pony and come over here. What if I told you I don't care? I'd call you a liar. It was a long shot, but it was all I had. There was no bluffing or tricking her, and a fight would be unreasonably risky. The gambit was over, and all I could do was save myself. I edged back until I felt my hind hoof touch the railing. From there, I skidded away from where the other bandit had fallen. I still had one advantage, minimal as it might be. Giving chase with a scroll in one claw would be more than a little awkward. Scared? Nah, just smart. I turned and leapt off the side, spreading my wings just a bit to break my fall. I landed to find the crowd had backed up, leaving room for me and, much to my dismay, the remaining Pegasus and Earth Pony bandits. Even though both had still had to close the distance, I was left with a griffin above me and a crowd boxing me in. Galel's head appeared over the railing. Going so soon? Thief? You're the one with the stolen goods, bandit, I shot back. A glitter of light caught my eye, pulling it to a crooked spear. As I floated over from behind the Pegasus bandit and pressed up against her neck. Stand down. This is an order. Blaze called out over the crowd. Galel simply grinned, the grin of a bird of prey. Yes, give yourself over to me. Oh boy, here comes the mess. With Blaze putting herself on the line, there was no turning back. We all stood tense, waiting for the others to move. The Pegasus bandit raised a hoof, but, to my surprise, Blaze was quicker, the shaft of her spear cracking the bandit in the muzzle. The weapon spun around, sweeping out her forelegs before coming to a rest against the back of her neck. I said, stand down. I had only a moment to shake away my astonishment as the Earth Pony charged in, air whooshing through my coat as I narrowly sidestepped his hybrid of a headbutt and a shoulder barge. I tossed my head as he continued past, smashing my forehead into the tender part of his barrel. The Earth Pony bandit let out a gasp, slowing to a half stagger as he turned for what would be another pass. Seizing the opportunity, I pivoted and bucked. My right hoof dug in to where his neck would be. He let out a croaking sound as I turned to face him. With bulging muscles, the Earth Pony lunged, swinging wildly. I ducked under his forehoof, but a bit of his chest still managed to glance off my face, and the world blurred. The bandit's stumbling blow returned to the ground, and I could have sworn I felt it shake. Regardless, he had left himself open again, and, blurriness or not, I decided to end up with another head toss. There was a crack as the bandit's jaw snapped shut, and with a pained gurgle, the Earth Pony crumpled into a dazed heap. There was only the barest of moments before Galel was upon me. A flash out of the corner of my eye. I leapt away, though I wasn't quite fast enough. Her talons grazed the surface of my cheek. I winced as beads of blood leaked out, gulfing tufts on my coat together. She came at me on 2 legs, and even though her stance was less than graceful, her claws were a series of indistinguishable streaks in the air. I took a quick hop backwards, knowing that such a strategy would have me a hard time to keep up. But I couldn't dodge all day, and who knows when more goons might show up. I needed some way to get past those talons, but there was no time to draw my wing blade. My eyes flirted around, looking, hoping for some kind of opening, as I continued to back up. After another dozen or so swipes, I caught a glimpse of how she was moving her claws. Stepping forward, I raised my wing, keeping it closed, but positioning it to catch the crook of her arm. She stumbled, eyes growing wide as her momentum carried her off balance. I ducked my head, winding up. With a twist, I shoved the talon aside and threw my head forward, slamming it straight into Galel's gut. She let out a squawk as she rolled across the ground, but she didn't stay there for long. Fire filled her eyes as she was up, screeching through the lump that she had charged me. I ducked under her beak, but there was little time for a counterattack. While staying on all fours, I kept the claws from coming out too fast. She was adding her own wing strikes into the mix. I kept my distance, circling and parrying only when I needed to. I knew the storm could not last forever. Inch by inch, she slowed, and once it had become visibly apparent, I made my move. Funny thing about griffin claws, they're a lot easier to stomp on than hooves. My forehoof came down hard with a sickening crack, though Galel's agonizing screech quickly overtook it. Our wings met, deflecting off each other as I pummeled her neck with more headbutts. Finally, a talon caught my wing, making a small clean slice across the muscle. I made a hasty retreat, focusing entirely on guarding myself, but Galel didn't seem to be feeling particularly bold, either, instead choosing to back up and nurse her own wounds. If nothing else, our little stare-down allowed me to draw my blade and attach it to my wing. As though on cue, we both charged again, leaping towards each other with a final strike. I got my wing above hers, and held her against me as I came down with all my weight. She bounced once she hit the ground, then skidded a short distance, sending up a small film of dust. I brought my blade down toward her neck, the move that would end it one way or another, but the strike never even got close. A flash of purple light flooded my eyes, and I felt myself being thrown back, an intense fire burning across my body, wherever it hadn't become numb. I tumbled head over hooves about 3 times before I could right myself. As I spun to face Galel, my mind ground to a halt. A sickly green light filled her eyes, while energy danced across her back like purple flames. They were somehow simultaneously intense and ominous, leaving her form a silhouette. My throat seized. Yet another involuntary whisper escaped my lips. Shadow Walker.